The night road knows how to heal. Sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. In the middle of a remote German highway, with a cold wind whistling outside the window and a forgotten melody playing in the cabin of a minibus. I've been behind the wheel for many years. The Przemyśl Paris route had become something routine for me, a job that required only attention and endurance. But this trip showed me how a single accidental object can unite a dozen completely different, strange people, erase the invisible boundaries between them, and make them open their hearts. My name is Ostap. My white Mercedes Sprinter was holding its course to Paris, gently swaying over the damp road joints. We had left Przemyśl late in the evening under a blanket of heavy autumn clouds that covered the entire sky like a dense lead sheet. The first hours of the trip passed in a familiar, even too monotonous road routine. Passengers silently scrolled through their phone screens, the dim, cold light of the displays reflecting blankly on their faces. No one wanted to talk. Everyone kept their distance, closed off in their own little worlds, shielding themselves from their neighbors with headphones or hoods pulled deep over their eyes. This is a common picture for my trips. People carry not only suitcases with them, but also heavy thoughts, fears of an unknown future in a new country where they are heading for study or work. They are guarded and closed off. In the back on the last row of seats lay an old, worn-out case. It had been left behind by a passenger from the previous week, and I had meant to drop it off at the Lost and Found warehouse in Przemyśl. But in the rush before departure, I simply forgot to do so. It was a heavy wooden guitar case covered in dark faux leather, plastered with old postage stamps and stickers from various European cities: Rome, Vienna, Munich, Prague. It looked like a true veteran of the roads. Once we passed Dresden and hit the German highway, the weather took a sharp turn for the worse. A downpour began, quickly escalating into a real storm. Heavy, loud raindrops drummed so hard against the metal roof of the bus that the noise began to irritate the passengers. People couldn't fall asleep, tossing and turning nervously in their seats, sighing and checking their watches over and over. The tension in the cabin grew with every kilometer. The air felt electric. Pause. Suddenly, on a sharp turn where the Sprinter swayed slightly on the wet road markings, the case on the back seat slid and fell loudly to the floor. The sharp bang made almost all the passengers flinch and look back. A young guy sitting in the second-to-last row, his name was Denis, and he was heading to France for his studies, carefully leaned over to pick up the heavy case. "Ostap, a guitar fell in the back," he said quietly, making his way through the narrow aisle to my cabin. "Can I move it closer to me so it doesn't rattle anymore and startle anyone?" "Go ahead, my friend," I replied, staring through the water-streaked windshield. "Or open it up and see what's inside. It's been riding around here for 2 weeks anyway, never finding its owner. Maybe it's not even a guitar at all." Dennis carefully placed the case on the empty seat next to him and clicked open the old brass latches. An inquisitive, almost breathless silence instantly fell over the cabin. Even the passengers who had been pretending to sleep opened their eyes and began watching him. Inside the case lay a classic acoustic guitar made of deep, dark wood. It looked very old, yet wonderfully cared for. As soon as the lid opened, a subtle but incredibly pleasant aroma of rosin, dry wood, and old coffee drifted through the cabin. There were faint scratches on the lacquered body, traces of many years of playing, traveling, and someone's emotions. "It's perfectly in tune," Dennis said in surprise, running a finger gently across the metal strings. A silvery, deep, and clear sound instantly filled the entire Sprinter, momentarily drowning out even the loud roar of the downpour outside. Pause. "Play something, young man." A muffled, slightly tired voice suddenly came from the middle of the cabin. It was Mr. Vasil, a stern-looking worker with calloused hands who hadn't uttered a single word the entire trip, only staring gloomily out the window. "Sleep isn't coming anyway with this rain pounding. Let's soothe our souls." Dennis smiled shyly, looked at me through the rearview mirror, and then settled more comfortably in his seat, pressing the instrument to his chest. He closed his eyes, tuned in, and took a deep breath. And then he began to play. It wasn't a complex, intricate classical piece that demanded academic attention. He played a simple, incredibly warm and peaceful melody. It reminded me of the whisper of a pine forest on a warm summer evening, the gentle lapping of waves, the warmth of a hearth, and the smell of fresh bread baked by a mother. The chords flowed smoothly into one another, creating a wonderful, almost magical atmosphere of coziness and safety inside our minibus. I looked in the rearview mirror and watched this incredible transformation happen right before my eyes. Mrs. Christina, who had been nervously clutching her document bag all evening and occasionally wiping away tears in secret on the back seat, noticeably relaxed her shoulders. She closed her eyes and rested her head against the window. For the first time on this trip, a gentle, calm smile appeared on her tired face. The stern Mr. Vasil sighed quietly in time with the music. Then he slowly pulled a mint candy out of his jacket pocket and silently handed it to the student girl sitting next to him, who had been sitting very tensely until then. The young couple in the second row, who had been quietly but angrily arguing over some trifle or a lost ticket earlier, fell silent. The guy gently wrapped his arm around the girl's shoulders, and she rested her head on his chest, intertwining her fingers with his. The guitar in Dennis's hands didn't just make sounds. It seemed to speak to each of us in our own most intimate language. It lifted the heavy road fatigue, the anxiety of the first working days in a foreign country, and the longing for home, left thousands of kilometers behind, somewhere in the cozy corners of Ukraine. Pause. I know this song. An elderly woman named Maria, who was traveling to visit her young grandchildren in the suburbs of Paris, said very softly. My mother always sang it to me before bed when I was very little. She began to sing along softly, almost soundlessly, simply humming the gentle melody with her trembling voice. A minute later, the girl from the second row joined in, catching a higher pitch. Then, a man in the front began to hum quietly in a low bass. Soon the entire cabin of my Sprinter, racing through the German night rain at 100 kilometers per hour, was singing in unison. It was an incredible, immense feeling of unity. 10 completely different people, who just a few hours ago had hidden their eyes from each other, pretended to be indifferent, and hid behind phone screens, now sounded like one big, warm, and friendly choir. I felt goosebumps run down my spine and arms. All my fatigue from many hours at the wheel, the strain in my eyes from constantly watching the wet road, simply evaporated, giving way to a strange feeling of lightness, inner peace, and strength. The van held the road confidently and smoothly, as if the engine itself was playing along with our choir and beat. When Dennis took the last long and fading chord, a soft, deep, and cozy silence settled over the cabin. The rain outside no longer seemed hostile or dangerous. It just rustled quietly against the glass and roof, complementing our shared peace. Thank you, son, Mr. Vasil said quietly, wiping a stray tear that glistened on his cheek with the corner of his sleeve. It felt like being home for a minute, as if I'm not traveling anywhere, but just sitting on the porch. We spent the rest of the trip to Paris having wonderfully warm and open conversations. The passengers no longer hid in their phones. They shared home stories, treated each other to homemade sandwiches, apples, and thermoses of tea, laughed, joked, and made plans to definitely meet up in Paris to take a walk along the Seine together. Our Sprinter became more than just a metal transport box. It became a real, living bridge between the past and the future that connected their souls. When we finally parked near the Gare de l'Est in Paris, the sun was shining brightly and warmly over the city, reflecting in the clean puddles on the platform. People got out of the vehicle slowly, in no hurry to part ways. They hugged goodbye, exchanged phone numbers, sincerely wished each other success, and warmly thanked me for the trip. Denis was one of the last to get out. He carefully placed the guitar back into the old wooden case, securely closed the brass latches, and looked at me. Keep it, Ostap, the young man smiled genuinely. It seems this guitar has found its proper, only place. It belongs in your bus. It's needed here. I left the case on the back seat. And now, whenever I set off on another long night trip to France, I know, no matter what happens on the road, thick fog, pouring rain, or exhausting fatigue, I always have something in the back that can bring warmth, hope, and a feeling of home back to my passengers. Short pause. 1 second. Take care of those traveling beside you on the road. Don't hide behind screens, and never close your hearts to the accidental chords of fate.